Hi, and welcome back. Today we're going to finish out our aeronautical decision-making flowchart and take a peek ahead at some of the other things that we'll cover this term. After doing our attitude check and our stress management, we're ready to start the headwork process. One of the most important things when you're starting the headwork process is to include your crew. Your crew can be obviously another pilot if you're in a two-pilot situation, but it also includes everybody that you can talk to on the radio. That includes the flight service station, air traffic control, other pilots, dispatch if you're within range of your company. The options are limitless. And it's important that you fess up that you have a decision that you're trying to make and that you're gathering information to make that decision with. Once you've made that decision, you can then alter your situation, hopefully for the better. Once you've done that, the whole process starts again, and it sort of goes into a loop. You see the change in the situation, you decide whether to address it through with skills or with headwork. You do your attitude and stress management. You actually conduct the headwork process, change the situation, and then back to the beginning again. It's important that you continue to be aware of everything in the PAVE mnemonic: pilot, the aircraft, the environment, and the external pressures at each time you go through this loop. There are a number of decision-making models, and they all utilize some sort of a circular process. The DECIDE model, for instance, we detect that a change has occurred. We use the PAVE to do this. Estimate the need to counter or react to the change. So we decide whether we can just keep flying as is or whether we need to change something. Choose a desirable outcome for the flight, whether that's completing the flight or some new outcome. Identify the actions necessary to control the change and do the actions, and then evaluate your effectiveness. And then we go back to the beginning and we do it again. Other models share a similar process, and they have certain things in common. You'll find both the OODA loop and the risk management decision-making process in your FAA handbooks. And they have these things in common. Situational awareness, once again, the pilot, the aircraft, the environment, and the external pressures. A focus on discrepancies, so we are detecting a change. A positive determination, we come to a decision on what we're going to do. We act on that decision, and then we go back to monitoring the results, back to situational awareness. It goes around and around, and that's what all of these models have in common. We don't just go through them once, we come back to the beginning and we continue to monitor the situation. Different models have more or less complexity to them. If we have time, we can be very analytical and go through a DECIDE or an OODA loop. When there's no time, we do things almost intuitively, and that's the type of situation where a prior thought process is very important. It's important that you have worked through all these steps on the ground and thought about what they involve, so that in real time when you're in the aircraft, you can handle things on the fly very, very quickly. There's one more thing on this aeronautical decision-making flowchart that is not in some of the OODA loops and other models, and that is the critique and risk management. This is something that happens between flights, where we sit down after the flight and critique ourselves and decide whether there's something that we want to change about the way that we approach our flight. Maybe you had a flight where you were landing at near your crosswind maximum, your personal minimums, and had a scary situation where maybe you almost ran off the runway or bounced really bad, and you decide that you want to change your personal minimums to avoid that in the future. That's an example of risk management. We're going to talk about that in detail later, both from an individual pilot perspective and an organizational perspective. The point of the critique and risk management is to change those four pieces so that you get safer and safer over time rather than making the same mistakes again. So as you change those four pieces, it can take a lot of forms. On the pilot, you may want to go out and get some new training, or brush up on something that's a little bit rusty. For the aircraft, the manufacturer may change the design of the aircraft, and that may be reflected in an airworthiness directive by the FAA. Or you may change the equipment that you're going to require yourself to have for certain types of flight. On the environment, you may want to change your weather minimums. For external pressures, you may want to redefine the type of operation that you're willing to engage in, given your experience level, or come up with some way of mitigating an external pressure that caught you off guard. Regardless, the point of that process is to improve the safety over time. That's it for this aeronautical decision-making flowchart, and we will talk more about these pieces in class.